Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you all the books that I kind of purchased in the first half of the year. So one of my goals, and that was carryover from last year, was that I wanted to limit my book spending and kind of stick to kind of trying to take down my TBR. And so my way of kind of tackling that was that I allowed myself to purchase 14 books last year, and then I can only purchase 14 books this year, and I think so far I'm doing okay. A lot of these, like all of them except one, were new releases that I was just really excited to kind of get into, and so actually all the books on here except one are ones that I've already read, so they are not really taking up any space on my TBR, and I think I can keep this up for the most part. Like all of these were already ones that I was planning on getting this year, and one of them was just happenstance. So I've been really good at kind of keeping and sticking to this. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So starting out, these are books that I picked up when I was in Montreal in the beginning part of the year. So I got these at Indigo, and the two that I picked up while I was there that I've also read when I was up there were obviously House of Flame and Shadow, and then also The Women by Kristin. These were two of my most anticipated releases, so it was nice that they came out kind of relatively close to each other, and they, like this one in particular, kept me busy, especially because I was living there by myself for 2 months, so it did keep me occupied. I finished it in a week. Really loved it. And then also this one I think was an incredibly moving book and take on a time that I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about, which was the Vietnam War, but specifically focusing on the women's experience. It was incredibly moving, and yeah, Kristin I can do no wrong. So next, this is a book that also came out. These next two books came out kind of towards the end of my time in Montreal, so I had them ordered on Barnes & Noble, so they got shipped to my parents' house. The first one is The Warm Hands of Ghost by Katherine Arden, and this is kind of a historical fiction, like fantasy, like magical realism book where we follow this young woman who basically her family has been killed and her brother is overseas fighting in World War I, where she gets a letter basically saying that her brother has passed away, but they don't really have any evidence that he has actually gone. So she was a nurse, and so she goes overseas to try to find her brother, but there's kind of this like magical aspect in here that I thought was really well done. This book was incredibly unique. It was really well written and really just a lot of fun. And kind of lastly, for that kind of spring books of the new releases, I then have The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. This is the second book to the Stolen Heir and part of the Stolen Heir duology, which is part of like the Folk of the Air world. And this follows kind of spin-off characters that are like side characters that have like very minor roles in the Folk of the Air trilogy, and this kind of follows them on their own experience. I really enjoyed this ending. You kind of get a different point of view in this one that I thought was really well done. It was really fun, and yeah, I think it also alluded to there being like another kind of spin-off that deals with the undersea, which is really fun. I've always really loved Holly Black's like fae or folklorian setting, especially growing up reading Spiderwick. Like I love that like folklore fae that have really like grit and like teeth to them. So this kind of also kind of scratches that itch that I've had since a kid, kind of reading those type of worlds. So yeah, definitely this one was a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to see where this series goes. Alrighty, next, these are kind of two series that I just kind of like binged, and they were on my radar for a while, so I decided to bite the bullet. But like I said, I marathoned them, read them back to back. These two include the Emily Wilde series by Heather Fawcett, and then also the Divine Rivals duology by Rebecca Ross. I loved the Emily Wilde books. I've seen people talk about them, and I saw this at my local bookstore once I came back from Montreal, and I was like, okay, I'll try it. I read it, and I was like, as soon as I finished it, I had to pick up the sequel. Like that's how good it was. Like it was just, again, it kind of reminded me of the Folk of the Air, like Holly Black fae world, and like that's like my favorite type of fae, is like that world. Like it just made me really want to read them. But it takes place in the 1920s, where we follow Emily Wilde, who is studying the fae and like fairies, and they kind of go off from there. There is a mild romance like subplot in here. I wouldn't classify it as a romantasy, and I would say in terms of like the spice meter, from like a bell pepper, which is like very little spice, to like a habanero, which I would say is like Actar. I would say this is bell pepper. So it is nice and refreshing to have a fantasy that has kind of very non-explicit romance in here that is just like enjoyable and it doesn't get too spicy. Like, it's a good change of pace and definitely a series that I love. And it, like I said, probably my favorite series of this year, like a favorite find. And then lastly with those series, I have the Divine Rivals duology by Rebecca Ross. Again, this is one that I've seen kind of talked about and I decided to get them. But I read them two back to back. And this one was fine. I did, like, it wasn't amazing, wasn't anything blowed me away, but again, it was nice to have a fantasy romance novel that again was low on the spice. So this one again will be like slightly a little bit more than a bell pepper, but like nothing too spicy. And like I said, it was good. It follows these two people who are working and competing for the same position at a newspaper, but they live in the world where these gods have kind of basically been at war, like been asleep, and now they are at war with each other, and it kind of goes off from there. I did love the kind of letter writing aspect in this, and I did definitely, it took me a while to believe the romance, and I didn't really kind of get it until the end, or like the last book. But again, this is kind of, you know, solid YA, wasn't anything groundbreaking or anything, but it was still a lot of fun. And lastly, these are my last two books. I have The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, which I read in June, and this one was kind of fine. It is kind of a historical fantasy that takes place during the Spanish Inquisition, where we follow this young woman who has kind of hidden her magical powers, and she ends up getting discovered by the lady for the house she's a maid in, and it ends up being exploited. This one, you could see more about it in my June wrap up, but I, you know, thought it was just okay. It was just fine, like nothing too fancy or spectacular or anything. So it was just, you know, it was just fine. And this is the only book on here that I didn't like intentionally plan to like read right away. My fiance and I were at Barnes and Nobles, and like he wanted one that was like a book that was like buy one get one 50% off, and so he only wanted one, and I was like, might as well get one for half off. So this was like my pick, and the only one that I haven't read on here, and it is A Feather So Black by Lyra, Selene. And this is one I'm a little bit nervous about because the reviews are kind of, you know, like a 3.7, which is not the best on Goodreads. But then again, I did really love the, what is it, Ordinary Monsters, which also has a similar rating. So like I said, I'm gonna go in with an open mind, but it kind of gave me ACOTAR vibes. But it says, in a kingdom where magic has been lost, Fia is a rare challenging left behind by the wicked fair folk when they stole the High Queen's daughter and retreated behind the locked gates of the folk realm. Rather than leave Fia an outcast, the queen takes her in and trains her to be a spy. When a hidden gate to the folk realm is discovered, Fia is tasked by the queen to retrieve the princess and break her curse. Accompanying Fia is Prince Rogan, her dearest childhood friend, and the queen's daughter's betrothed. As they journey through the forests of the folk, Fia's mission is complicated by her feelings for Rogan and unexpected attraction to the Fae Lord holding the queen's daughter captive. So I think it kind of goes off from there. Like I said, I'm a little bit nervous because, like I said, the reviews aren't the best, but I will go in with an open mind. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of the books that you purchased this year and all of that fun stuff, or if you keep to like a book buying ban where you kind of limit how many you can get per year. Like I said, I do believe I can kind of keep to my 14 because there really isn't anything else coming out in like the later half of the year. So I'm not too worried. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.